So we all have books that were massively influential in our lives. For me, one of those books was St. Augustine's Confessions. I read it for the first time when I was a freshman in college taking a Christian classics course. And it just blew my mind. And one of the things that I loved about St. Augustine's Confessions was the way he talked about his mom. Just so much affection for his mother, who basically prayed him into the church. He was a wayward son, a prodigal child. And so we're going to talk about the power of praying for prodigal children. If you have children, especially children who aren't walking with the Lord, listen to this. So one thing I love about the Confessions is just how honest St. Augustine is. He basically starts the story at his birth. I mean, even as a baby, he talks about what his nurses would say about him, and he says, even then at that time, I was a sinner. Basically, I wanted everybody to serve me. And as he got older, his mom, who was a Christian, his dad was not a follower of Christ at the time. She was wanting to raise him in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, teaching him about Jesus. But from a young age, he started to go astray. He tells the story of when he was a teenager, on one occasion stealing from a pear tree. And he makes a big deal of this. It's sort of famous in the book now. But he makes a big deal of it because he says, I didn't steal from the pear tree because I needed pears. I had better pears, back at home. I just did it for the thrill of stealing, of doing something bad, doing something wicked. And so he's on this sort of trajectory away from the faith of his mother that seems like it's just getting worse and worse. For a long period of his life, he got caught up in this religious sect known as Manichaeism. Manichaeism was a 3rd century, basically religious cult started by this Persian religious leader named Mani. It was the sort of mix of Zoroastrianism. You had some sort of Buddhist ideas there. You had some Christian thoughts sprinkled in as well. It was kind of Gnostic, this dualism between good and evil. And so they rejected, the Manichaeans rejected the idea of an all-powerful creator God. They certainly stood against Christianity. And while he was in his 20s, St. Augustine was really caught up in this. And you imagine a mom, a faithful mother, watching her son get caught up in something like a cult that's very hostile towards Christianity. And so he was confused philosophically, religiously, but he also was kind of a true prodigal. He chased after lust and women. At one point in the Confessions, I love the way he puts it. He says about his mother, "Her concern, and in the secret of my own conscience I recall the memory of her admonition delivered with vehement anxiety, was that I should not fall into fornication, and above all that I should not commit adultery with someone else's wife. These warnings seemed to me womanish advice, which I would have blushed to take the least notice of. But they were your warnings," he's speaking to God there, "and I did not realize it. I believed you were silent, and that it was only she who was speaking when you were speaking to me through her. In her you were scorned by me her son, the son of your handmaid, your servant. But I did not realize this, and went on my way headlong with such blindness that among my peer group I was ashamed not to be equally guilty of shameful behavior when I heard them boasting of their sexual exploits." So Augustine is not in great shape. And so what does his mom do? And throughout the book, he talks about this. She prayed for him. "By my mother's tears, night and day, sacrifice was being offered to you from the blood of her heart, and you dealt with me in wonderful ways." Over and over again throughout Augustine's Confessions, he talks about how his mother labored for him with her prayers, watering the ground with her tears, and even getting other people to pray for him, pastors and friends and anyone, it seems, who would listen. She was so zealous and consistent, faithful to pray for her son, even when it looked like everything was hopeless. After years and years of prayer, and almost a decade of sitting at the feet of the Manichaean heresy, Augustine was transformed. He came to a point of desperation in his life where he fell beneath a fig tree and essentially cried out to God. And as he was crying, weeping with tears, he heard in the distance the voice of some children singing or chanting, "Pick up and read, pick up and read." And at first he was confused by this, but after some time thought, well, maybe this is God speaking to me. And he had a copy of the scriptures, and he opened the Word of God up, and he read the first thing that his eyes fell upon was Romans chapter 13, verses 13 through 14. "Let us walk properly as in the daytime, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and sensuality, not in quarreling and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires." A more fitting word could not have been spoken to St. Augustine in that moment. And he says, he read that, and I neither wished nor needed to read further. At once, with the last words of this sentence, it was as if a light of relief from all anxiety flooded into my heart. All the shadows of doubt were dispelled. One of the highlights of Augustine's Confessions is when he shares later about telling his mom about his experience, his conversion, the fruit of years and years of faithful prayer, the joy, the celebration that she had because of God's faithfulness. So why do I share all of this with you? There were points in Monica's journey where it looked pretty bleak. Augustine was leaving the city where they were. He left her behind. It seems like he's drifting further and further away into various kinds of idolatry and lust. And there were probably times where she felt extremely discouraged, maybe even hopeless, times where she didn't pray as she should have. And I think we've all experienced that in our relationship with the Lord. But nevertheless, God heard her prayers, and he hears your prayers as well. I want to encourage you as a parent, a mother or a father, to be committed to praying for your children, whether they're distant from the Lord right now, maybe not walking with Christ, or if they are, faithful, plugged into a good church, wonderful. Cover them in your prayers because God hears your prayers on their behalf. And one of the beautiful things about the story of St. Augustine is his story illustrates that in a powerful way.